Well, we're here. We're just waiting now for one or two other folks to join us. Welcome to those who are here in Africa, in the Far East, and I think we're waiting for one or two from the United States of America. So we're just a couple of minutes away from this first webinar on emails, and I'm looking forward to this. Hope you're going to enjoy it. It's in England here. We are, well, good morning to you all. Thank you for joining us. And we're a minute or so early. So I want to welcome everyone from around the world, from west to east, from the United States, through to Europe, through to Africa, through to the Far East. Some of you it's early morning, some of you it's midday. Here in England, Aylesbury, it's 30 degrees, 88. We're saying in old money is the phrase we use even for temperatures. And in the Far East, it is evening. So still half a minute away, and just in case one or two more want to join us, I'll wait till it's exactly 1 o'clock. Just a few seconds more. So let me introduce myself. My name is Martin Manser. For those of you who don't know me, I'm an editor and trainer. By profession, I'm an editor. That means I've compiled or edited, in fact, over 200 reference books in 36 years. So 3 kinds of books: books on the Bible. First of all, I'm a Christian. Books on the Bible, reference books there. Lots of dictionaries, thesauruses, books on English usage, and then thirdly, books on business skills, so time management, project management, communication, such as we are working on now, writing reports. I'm sitting in my study here in the UK. Apologies, it's a little bit or very untidy. It's I sometimes think of it as a word factory. It's perhaps a little unkind, but here I am, and I produce words here in the written form, and it's my base. And I go from here to various parts of the world to lead courses, doing training on those subjects, such as Introduction to Project Management, Time Management, and I think my passion is communication. So we're into the webinar now. If there's any time you want to ask me questions, you can type those out, and I've got them on my screen here. They'll come up, and then I can answer those questions. So I've got 7 top tips on making the most of email. I think I started off with 3 and then 5, and then now we have 7. I'm going to email you a PDF of the text on at the end after the webinar's finished. So our first principle is knowing the purpose of your email. Some of these principles will be very simple, as it were, and some deeper, but they've all got some content. Knowing the purpose of your email. When I first started leading these courses on communication, I thought long and hard about how I could sum up what happens in communication in a simple way. And I came up with 3 words, all to do with air that we breathe. So wherever you are in the world, you're breathing air. A standing for audience, I standing for intention, R standing for response. So let me just work through those quickly. Audience, so knowing who you're writing to. Knowing who you're writing to. The way that you write to your boss, perhaps slightly more formal, slightly more distant, will be very different from the way in which you write to a colleague who's a close friend. Obvious, but we adapt what we're saying to the person we're writing to. And secondly, here very clearly under this knowing the purpose of your email is the I, the intention. What are you trying to say? This seems to me to be probably about the most important thing that I'll be saying in this half an hour. What are you really trying to say? And if I'm working on an email, I'll often ask myself that question: what precisely am I trying to say? So a few weeks ago, I had an email from somebody. They were explaining to me some new software, and that was it. And I thought, hang on, what's this? What do they want me to do? I had to email back and say, is this just for my information, or are you suggesting I purchase this? And sure enough, it was just for my information. But the person who had written that email initially could well have said, Martin, this is just for your information. Audience, intention, and response. You see, if your message, if what you're trying to intend, if what you're intending to say isn't clear to you, then it won't be clear to the person who is receiving the email. It isn't good enough for us to say, oh, well, I've just sent it out. I've written this email, just press send. That's it. I'll let them sort out what I'm trying to say. No, that's not good enough. You need to work out what it is you're precisely trying to say. And sometimes you need to explain some background at the beginning before you can get onto the heart of what you're trying to say. Make sure that background, as we'll say in a few minutes, make sure that background is very short, because you want somebody to see the key message. Audience, intention, as I say, response. What do you want people to do with your email? And similarly, I received an email again a week or two ago, colleagues saying they hadn't received part of a dictionary I'd sent to them, I'd emailed to them, they hadn't received it. And it was left like that. And I'm thinking, is this a polite request for me to resend it or what? So again, I had to say, what do you mean by this? All because the person who was very busy, but we're all busy, you see, so we need to make best use of each other's time. Yeah? All because that person didn't say, by the way, Martin, these didn't arrive, please can you resend them? You see, all of these things have very practical impact. Audience, intention, response. This means that for the audience, we'll use CC, carbon copy, for those of you who remember that, the thin blue paper that would make a copy, CC or blind copy, so you're sending something to somebody and you're not letting the person who's the main person knowing who the BCC is going to. We'll use those sparingly. We won't send reply all. You know, I think I've had an email just in the last day or two where someone's suggesting a date for a meeting and I'm almost tempted to press reply all. I don't need to. I can reply just to the person who's setting up the meeting. Otherwise, well, we'll just get lost and we'll just be answering emails all day that don't concern us. We'll be receiving emails that don't concern us and we'll be answering emails that don't concern us. So be careful. You don't need to CC or BCC everybody. And then the other practical implication of this is having a clear subject line, a clear and informative subject line. Be specific about the subject that you're writing about, as specific as you can be. So you're making better use of the reader's time. Person receiving the email will be able to say, be able to understand, do I need to read this, or can I just wait? Well, it will just wait till later. If it's urgent, you might want to put urgent on that. Or you might want to pick up a phone, because email isn't always the best medium for communication. You might even want to talk to the person next to you rather than writing an email to them. Yeah? Do you remember talking? It's what we do with our mouth. Yes? I'm being deliberately provocative here. But we don't need to use email for everything, please. So again, if you've got any questions, do type them out and I'll see them and I'll answer them. So that's our first point, knowing the purpose of your email. Secondly, being clear about what you want to communicate. It's similar, but being clear about what you want to communicate. Are you sure you know what you want your readers to do as a result of them reading the email? Now here, let me just steal some of my thunder, as it were, from our next webinar, which will be on editing documents, checking documents and editing them. But sentences in English really should be between 15 to 25 words long. 15 to 25 words long. If they're much shorter than that, then it'll sound very, very simple. Or if they're shorter than that all the time, they'll sound very, very simple. If they're much, much longer, yeah. And on one of my courses, I had someone who had a 67-word sentence, and the most important bit was buried right down the bottom in brackets even. Yeah. And it took, I don't know, several minutes to say, okay, that's all. This is the most important thing. Get to that sooner rather than later. We can give too little information, these sort of barriers of good communication. We give too little information, or we can give too much. You know, some people give too much unnecessary information. Just get to the point, you feel like saying. So when you've drafted your email, go back over it and edit it, check it, change it, revise it. So I sometimes say on my writing courses, you've finished the working week, Thursday or Friday, you come back on the next Monday and you look at what you've written and you think, who wrote this? And you think either this isn't bad, or actually more commonly, this is actually rather rubbish. This is rubbish. Who wrote it? And you did last Thursday or Friday. And you can't remember it and it doesn't make sense. Your task is to unravel it, to make it clear as possible to the reader, not as full of barriers as possible, but as clear as possible to the readers. Obviously, you're going to be accurate. You're going to be true to what's right. You're going to be writing in the right tone. We'll come to that in a moment. So we've had firstly knowing the purpose of your email, audience, intention, response, and therefore using CC and BCC sparingly with a clear subject line. And secondly, then being clear about what you want to communicate. You're sure of what you want to communicate, and you know you're clear about what you want your readers to do, and you're removing all the barriers because you've checked that email, particularly an important email. You've checked it, and I'm going to say this: if you don't find mistakes, if you don't find something wrong, you've not checked it enough. Yeah. If you read through something and you don't find things that can be expressed better, or mistakes that need correcting, then you've not checked it enough. It could be simple things like you copy a previous email and you forget to change a name at the front. I've done that. Yeah. And fortunately, you found it before you've sent it. Thirdly, use appropriate language. Use appropriate language. Now, the thing about emails is that they're new, only come about in the last 20 or so years or whatever, 20, 30 years. They're new. Now, letters have a particular etiquette. Letters you begin, dear sir or madam, dear John, dear Mr. Manser. And correspondingly at the end, if it's dear sir or dear sir or madam, you'll have yours faithfully in British English, capital Y, lowercase f. If it's dear John or dear Mr. Manser, British English, you'll have yours sincerely, capital Y, lowercase s. Now, emails are new and there's no such formal etiquette. However, certain rules, certain guidelines, are not rules, certain guidelines have developed. You'll need an opening and a closing greeting. Obviously, if you're communicating to your colleague next door, you're not going to do that. But we're talking here about a slightly formal business email. You won't put hi because you don't know them or you don't know them very well. You're going to start off dear. Not hi, but dear. And if you don't know them very well, you say dear Mr. Manser, dear Ms. Manser, dear Miss, dear Mrs. Okay, it's better to start more formally and then come down to the informal, because once you're informal, you can't go back up. So even one of the people watching here, I think we started off as dear Mr. Manser, and then we moved to dear with a first name. Better to do that because you're seeing a relationship develop. That's what an email's about. It's about developing a working relationship. So you don't use hi in an opening greeting. You're going to use dear, and again, I'd say be slightly more formal than informal. You're going to close it with, well, the two ways that are happening at the moment that we're seeing are best wishes or kind regards. Kind regards seems to be winning. I personally prefer best wishes, but please, a capital K and a lowercase r, or a capital B and a lowercase w. Okay, best wishes, capital B, lowercase w. And the thing about email is we use lots of phrases, as we do in business letters. So I look forward to hearing from you. I'd be grateful if you could send us this information. Our main concern is, if you're negotiating with somebody, don't be afraid of using these stock phrases. You can get books of these, or I'm sure there are lists of them on the internet. Use particular phrases. Please do not hesitate to contact us should you require information. These are the standard stock of the content of email. So opening, closing, using certain phrases, and at the end, please add a signature with other contact details, just in case somebody wants to ring you. Yeah, somebody wants to telephone you. Again, do you remember a telephone? Well, we've all got mobile phones. Yes, put your phone number there in case somebody wants to ring you. They may only get answer phone, and you may want to have the documentation for legal purposes in an email, but please add other contact details along with your name, your job title, your postal address, I would suggest, and other contact details. So how are we doing? Any questions coming in yet, please? Maybe early morning or early evening or late evening, you're perhaps a bit tired or a bit sleepy still. Knowing the purpose of your email, firstly. Secondly, being clear. Thirdly, using appropriate language. Fourthly, structure your email well. Structure it well. Now, in America, and we've certainly got at least one person from America here, Americans were taught a topic sentence. A topic sentence comes at the beginning of a paragraph, and that explains, it sets the tone. It contains the basic idea that the paragraph is intended to convey. And I'm going to suggest that if you've got a long email, then you put at the beginning of that email the key information that you want someone to understand. Your opening line, your opening gambit. You may even want to repeat that right at the end, like as you would in a conversation or a meeting. You'd say, okay, this is the most important thing at the beginning, and again at the end, this is another important thing. Paragraphs, then, a topic sentence will set the scene, will explain what the rest of the paragraph is about. Now, I'm going to explain a technique I've developed, and I'm going to talk more about this in the next webinar, but the technique is what I call focused editing. Focused editing. And I developed this technique when I was teaching engineers, because engineers some engineers found this whole report writing and writing very creative, and wanted some almost rules that they could say, okay, is what I've written measure well against certain objective rules? And what I suggested was this. It's very, very simple. You take your text, your draft text, and you copy it. Okay, you can do that very simply on any computer. And then you put when in that copied text, you begin each of the sentences on a new line. So where there's a full stop, you put a paragraph, you put a line break, carriage return in old-fashioned language, and you start it on a new line. So your opening paragraph had 6 sentences. Your copied version will have 6 sentences here, spread out, say, over 9 lines, because some of them will go over more than 1 line. And then you go back to each of these copied sentences and you say, what's the focus of each sentence? Is it the beginning of something? Is it the effect of something? Is it the time when something happens? Is it a disadvantage or an advantage? And you put in square brackets at the beginning of that sentence what its focus is. And then at the end, when you've done that, and it doesn't take that long, you can go back and say, okay, is there a logical order between the different focuses, foci if you want, between the different in the different sentences? Okay, you look at the square brackets of each one and say, does each one follow on? And I'm sure Very often they won't, because what will happen is that you'll discover you've written when something's going to happen up here in the third sentence and then again in the fifth. Aha, you can bring those two together, edit it. Otherwise the reader will have to go, well, what's happening? Yeah. Well, you've missed out a logical step. Certainly in our engineering term, when we were describing a process, we discovered we'd missed out an important step, or we'd missed out a definition. We'd assumed somebody knew what we were talking about. So editing, and we'll talk more about that in the next seminar. But I want to suggest you have a logical flow. That's the key point. A logical flow can go through that. So knowing the purpose of your email, being clear what you want to communicate, using appropriate language, structure your email well. Paragraphs, topic sentence, logical flow. Fifthly, watch the tone of your email. You're not going to write in capital letters because those indicate shouting. You know that. The danger with emails is that they're too abrupt. I know I'm guilty of that. Sometimes I need to go back and add something a little bit more about the weather, about the weekend. But you'll know the person who you're writing to. Maybe they just want the brief information. Maybe they don't want the flowery bits. Yeah. You can add some softer opening and closing sentences. So here it's just one or two sentences. This was an email I wrote to someone who was actually rather late in delivering some piece of work. And rather than just saying, where's the piece of work? I wonder how you're getting on with the Lauder report. You'll probably remember it was due a day or two ago. Then I quoted an example from my own work. I remember how I spent ages on a similar report last year, and I always seemed to be 2 days away from completing it. So I showed understanding. I kept on finding material I wanted to add, so I understand the situation you're in. Do let me know if you have any particular difficulties that you want to discuss with me. Otherwise, I hope to receive your report before too long. So that was a sensitively written, took a long time to compile, because my aim was to get the information that the report out of this person. But I wanted to say I understand what their situation is like. Sixthly and seventhly, then, our final 2 points. Yeah, just back onto the tone. If you're angry, draft the email, but certainly don't send it. You need to calm down and take that opportunity to soften the text, rephrase it, maybe just delete it and start again. But certainly, if you're angry, don't press send. That's the temptation, isn't it? You're letting off steam and pressing send. Please don't do that. And then our last 2, and we're in good time, our last 2, and please, again, any questions, we've got time for those at the end. Our last 2 concern the use of time, and we'll devote a whole webinar to these later. Writing emails, sixthly, making the most of your time. And there are 3 points here, possibly 4. Shortcuts on your computer. Now, on a Windows PC, I have, years ago, I had to edit an 8 million word book. It was a Bible commentary, and I sat down at the beginning of that and thought, okay, over the next several years, I'm going to be typing words like because, are, the, this, there. In fact, I sat down with the 100 most common words of English and thought, let me do some shortcuts on the computer. And I went into Tools Autocorrect. Tools Autocorrect. It's that bit of the software where if you type friends wrongly, if you type F-R-E-I-N-D-S, it will automatically change it to F-R-I-E-N-D. Yeah. So I went into that and I keyed in lots of these things. So because just became B-E-C. And every time I keyed B-E-C and hit enter, carriage return, space rather, it would change to because. Even the word the most common word of the language, has got 3 characters. Yeah. Make it just 1. So T for me is the word the. R, A-R-E is AA, because my finger's already on R. I've got 100 of these. In fact, I've probably got about 2,000 now. So names, stock phrases, I look forward to hearing from you at the end of an email, is there. Yeah. We often use the computer as a typewriter. It is not, it's a computer. So make the most of these shortcuts. Make the most of these shortcuts. Enter them. If you change computers, get someone in IT to change that file, or you'll have to redo them. But they're part of you. You can use them in note-taking as well. Secondly, font and font size. If you're using a particular font and font size for your emails, use that same font and font size for the rest of your computer work. Otherwise, you'll be having to cut and paste and change. You'll be wasting time doing that. So the more you can spend to save time, the better. Thirdly, make the most of email-free days. Some organizations say, okay, Wednesday, we're not having emails. Please don't use emails. Talk to each other, use a phone, something like that. And also, I've noticed I receive very few emails on a Friday, partly because I do work with the Middle East people, but also because Friday, people are getting ready for the weekend. Lots of emails Monday, Tuesday. So maybe Friday you can do more thinking, traditionally, if you're not getting ready for the weekend. But there you can use more thinking time because you know you're going to have fewer interruptions. And a note also on making the most of your time, filing emails. Now, on my computer, I'm working with lots of different publishers and organizations. So each one of those will have a directory and subdirectories for projects and so on. But if you want to retrieve an email quickly, I use develop your own system. The system I use is often the person's first name and surname. So if the man is Tony Smith, then TS followed by the date. Now, in that I'm working both with American and British people, I would say for today, I do 160913, 13th of September. 160913. Develop your own system, keep to it. And then at the end, I'll often add in one word what the core bit of that email is about. So if it's about contract, I'll say contract. Then I can see at a glance what that email is about. And then finally, reading emails to make most of your time. Reading emails, only check your emails once or twice, certainly, let's say twice a day. Or if you're doing concentrated work, switch your emails off. You don't need to have your emails on all the time. In fact, every time you answer an email, it takes you away from the main work that you're doing. Yeah? So I like trains. And I once spoke to an engine driver and I said to him, okay, how long do you spend at a station? And he's told me you spend 5 minutes. You make 5 minutes on the timetable, but it's only stopping for 1 minute. So the train will only stop for 1 minute at the actual station, but you lose 5 minutes on the whole timetable. And similarly, it may only take you half a minute or 1 minute to answer that email, but you're going to lose 3-4 minutes picking up before you pick up momentum again. Delete junk mail. Don't even look at it. Just delete it. If you get an envelope through the post, you don't open it and decide it's junk. You just put it aside immediately. The same with email. So just ditch the junk email before you don't even open it. Yeah. So there we have our 7 points on top tips on making the most of email. Let me just run through them again quickly. Knowing the purpose of your email, audience, intention, response, who you're writing to, what are you trying to say? What response do you want them to give? Please use CC, BCC sparingly. Please put a clear and informative subject line. And if that changes, then you can start a new email or you can change the subject line. Secondly, being clear about what you want to communicate, being sure of that. sentences if you're tending to do very long ones. And if you're tending to write very short ones, then expand them. We'll come on to that another time. Use appropriate language. Opening, not hi, please, dear. Err on the formal side. A closing, kind regards, best wishes, capital, lowercase, other contact information. Structure email well in paragraphs. Logical flow of sentences within a paragraph. Making sure the tone of your email is appropriate, not too abrupt. And certainly if you're angry, don't send that email. Writing emails, making the most of your time. Dig out tools autocorrect. Please, that's a really practical way. Press F1 and you can save yourself time. I reckon I saved myself 2 weeks work in that 8-year project. Reading emails, making the most of your time. Check your emails once or twice a day, please. So there we have it. And just to clarify, my next 2 webinars on October the 4th, we've got checking documents. So I've alluded to that a bit, checking documents effectively on October the 4th, the same time. And then on managing your time, 7 top tips, managing your time on Tuesday, 8th of November, 12:30 GMT. All these seminars are at that time. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this seminar, this webinar. I've enjoyed giving it to you, and I look forward to seeing you again soon through the wonders of the internet. Thank you and goodbye.